But they have a great game going. It's one of the best scams that's been developed. Their election scam. What we call the voting trap. This is a game that they desperately want you to play, but it's a game you can never win. Just think about it. They say to the oppressed people, well, you know, you got to vote for one or the others. And they have it set up the way it's evolved, not just through conspiracy, but the way the different interests have worked themselves out, is that the Democrats more appealed to more of the oppressed people, to more of the poor people, to more of the working class people, to more of the people in the inner cities, to more of the black and Latino and other oppressed peoples. That's their role, that's their function. They appeal more to them. And you know, sometimes people think that you can maneuver within this. Well, we'll form a voting bloc, see? And then we'll go to the Democrats and say, well, you can't win without our swing vote. So if you don't do what we want, we're not going to vote for you. But you know what they're going to say? Who are you going to vote for? The Republicans? They got you coming and going with this game. It's a game you cannot win. It's a game they desperately want you to play. Because the thing is, they'll tell you, well, if you don't vote, then you have no say-so in the society. The simple fact is, by voting, you still have no say-so in how the society is run. Because the decisions are not made by the votes. You don't even get to vote on what you really want to vote on. By the time you get to vote, they already picked out everything you're voting on. What's a legitimate issue? Who's a legitimate candidate? Who can get tens of millions of dollars to run out here and have TV ads and everything else? Somebody raises something good, they're not a legitimate candidate. They'll tell you that. It's all being controlled by the same class of people that finances the candidates. They may give more money to one party or to another at a given time, but they're controlling the whole thing, and they know in the end, after the election's all over, they're going to go back to these same people and tell them this is how it has to be. They're going to work it out together with this political group of people that runs for office. So by the time you get to vote, they've already decided whom you can vote for and what you can vote for. Look at the 2002 congressional elections. People were desperately, millions of people were desperately wanting to vote for somebody that would be against this whole thing Bush was doing. This whole war in Iraq, this whole juggernaut, all this repression and everything else. They were begging the Democrats to come out and oppose it so they could go to the polls and vote against it. And the Democrats refused. There was no way in that election, if you wanted to vote against that you could vote against it. And to be honest, part of the reason why there were such massive demonstrations is because people were frustrated. They couldn't find an outlet within the workings of the system that they could express the opposition they wanted to express, so they came into the streets. And that's a good thing. And it's going to be even better when things reach a real crisis point and it's true on a much greater scale and we get to a whole revolutionary situation. Now, we're not going to draw the dividing lines between people who vote and people who don't vote. That would be a serious mistake. We have to unite with people to rise up and oppose this system, and if they go vote, let's get them back out on the street to do something that'll really matter. But voting is not going to change anything in the interests of the people. I was watching this Democratic Party debate the other day, and Sharpton got up and made a fairly clever comment. He said, well, they asked him about his comment that black people are tired of having the Democratic Party treat him like a mistress. So they said, what do you mean by this? And he said, well, what I mean is you got to go home with the one that brought you to the dance. We're the ones that taking the Democratic Party to the dance, so they can't go home with those other interests. They got to go home with us. It doesn't work that way. Because you know what? You're not the one that brought them to the dance. The one that brought them to the dance are the same ones that run everything already. They're just running a game on you. And while they may not dance with you, they're certainly willing to take you for a ride. So it's one of the great things of this country, you see, that we have the great embodiment of democracy, the two-party system. Where would we be without these two parties? the Republic-Fascists and the Republicrats. But the simple fact is that neither of these parties and none of these bourgeois politicians, the ones who were supported by the capitalist class, represent the interests of the people, or ever could represent the interests of the people, or they would never get anywhere, and they would be crushed if they tried. We had a living example of this in the 2000 Republican Convention. It was a perfect example. It was such a perfect example, it was a great insult. The 2000 election was a great insult to the people in many ways. One way was Jerry Falwell got on television and he was being interviewed during the election, and he was asked his opinion on various things, and he said, well, candidate Bush has asked us to be quiet until after the election. Now, right there, they're telling you they're running a game on you. They're telling you, I'm not saying anything now because what I say might make you mad, so I'm going to wait till afterward, and then we do what we want to do. That's an insult on top of an insult. They're running a game on you, and then they're telling you that they're running a game on you. And then they did the same thing at the Republican Convention. The Democratic Convention was this way, too, out in L.A. But the Republican Convention really captured this, because it went on 3 levels. On one level was the big show for the people, the big show of Republican inclusivity. Everybody was welcome. Remember, they even had Chaka Khan and The Rock there. They made a big show of inclusivity within a certain limit. Meanwhile, everything was already sewed up already as to what was going to happen. But even more fundamental than that, over in another place, literally in the dark, some of the news cameras got out there in the dark, and they showed you all these high rollers, all these big corporate heads and everything coming up in these other parts of the city, away from where the convention and the whole show was being held, to meet with Bush and his advisors to talk about what was really going to be done. And it was all right there. They ran a show, and then they insulted us and put insult on top of insult. And once again, you go to the Democrats and say, you know, do something for us. Or what? You going to vote for them? This is a game we can never win. We need a whole different political system. We need a different dictatorship. We need a different class ruling society and involving the masses of people for the first time in running and transforming society. This is why we talk about the dictatorship of the proletariat, why it's necessary and what it's for.